Previously on Coach's Chronicles.
Person. Like, one thing about me is the closer I get to competition, the more I amplify. Like, it's not as unfamiliar to them. It's unfamiliar to you because you don't see how they prepare. All right, here we go. We back with another one, and this is a fun one. This is episode 3, and we are now talking about the fundamentals. Now, before we begin, let's make sure that we take care of a little bit of in-house, and I want you to understand the purpose of the show. So the purpose of this show is simple. We are here to grow the game of basketball and football from a coaching perspective. That's what I do. I've been a coach for 10 years now, working with youth up through high school, former collegiate athlete, and I have a pretty good expertise, and sometimes I do dabble a little bit in the refereeing. So I see it in so many different angles, right? Now, if this is the type of content that you like and it's something that's for you, please make sure before we make any more steps towards this thing, go ahead, whatever you're listening on, like and subscribe so that this can be something that can be in the cards for you on a day-to-day basis. So today we're talking about fundamentals, which I feel at times is a practice that most people don't always want to move towards because they feel like, it's something daunting or we got to do this little thing again, right? People want to ignore the fundamentals. Well, let's just talk about what fundamentals are. So here's what a fundamental is. It's a central or a primary rule of something, right, on which something is based. So if that's what a fundamental is, why should we go away from it? Why is it needed, you might ask? Well, here's what it is. It makes you better equipped for situations when it's difficult, right? That's one thing. And then you gain more wisdom whenever you are a person who practices the fundamentals all the time, right? The necessary drills that create a person, not just in the field of sports. In the field of sports, not necessarily. We're not just going to, micro you into sports. When you're a person that is really big on the fundamentals and the basics of life, it just puts you at a different echelon than anybody else who you deal with. So that's one thing about it. And then secondly, you see a bigger picture and you're more prepared for it because you can always do what is small. So the basic things, right? Now, today, as I move into this next part, which is bringing me to my next segment, the essentials. The essentials. If you're a person and you know the word essential, you know it's important. So that means it's not something that you can just poof away. You cannot ignore the essential elements of anything that you do, right? If you're a cook, you got to understand your utensils, right? If you're a teacher, you got to know the importance of a warm up and a bell ringer or whatever it is that you use, right? If I'm teaching English language arts, it's very necessary that you can read and comprehend, or you would never understand what it is you're reading. And when you're assessed, you might show low scores. That's essential, right? So when it comes to sports, there are certain drills that you can never get away from. The essential drills, right? I'm talking about drills that focus on mobility, right? And one of those main things that I don't think people should get away from, everybody is in this new society where we think we're smarter than time, is cones. Cone drills stand the test of time. Cone drills help you eliminate bad habits. They teach you angles because in sports, that's what it's about. These are drills that are necessary that go across all sports, not just one. They don't focus on one thing. Cone drills are going to help you be more mobile and stable and flexible. They're going to wrap in all of the things that I'm about to talk about, right? The next one, flexibility. How can I expect you, right, as an athlete, to be able to do certain things, run, jump fast, do all of these things for me, and you're not flexible? You can't move, right? Your hips are as stiff as a board that I've seen coming out of Home Depot, and I expect you to be able to get this shifty kid and be able to slow them down when we don't never work on your flexibility. Make it make sense. The math ain't mathing, as they would say. So the hurdle to stretch is one of those simple things you cannot just choose to ignore. It's there all the time, right? And you may be wondering, like, okay, I'm not near a track. What can I do to still work on the hip mobility and the flexibility within the hips. Where you got the traditional wall swings where you put your hands on the wall and then your leg swings left and right and you watch your leg as it swings back and forth for you. That is a small flexibility practice that will be able to make you and your athletes in a better situation, right? Then you don't have a hurdle again. Well, if you see traffic cones are about, waist high. Those things are pretty tall. You may see them cross guard walks, all of them have them. Doing the traditional hurdle stretch with that, stepping over the cone. You're stepping over the cone, getting over the cones, working those hip flexibility to get you into better places, right? And then you always got to remember, I got to work my eyes, my hands, and my coordination, right? So what always helps that? Any type of activity in sport that is going to pop, like that brings forth color, is something that will always work eye-hand coordination. And the one that stands the test of time, tennis balls. Throwing a small object and catching it at a high clip and a high rip and doing that every single day is building your eye-hand coordination. It's something as simple as just rolling the ball, right? You roll the ball up against the wall and then you go track it every time. That's building you for baseball, right? That's teaching you to attack and see it as it moves towards you to where you're not afraid of what is in front of you. You have to work on eye-hand coordination so that can transcend everything you're doing. Because if we're talking basketball and football, you playing with, who knows if you ever play with somebody like this, generational talent like LeBron James, who throws this Randy Johnson like a fastball through the lane to a corner 3-point shooter at a lightning clip. You got to have some good eye-hand coordination to even be ready for that, because 10 times out of 10, he's not even going to be looking at you because his basketball IQ is higher than everybody's on the court. So when he throws it to you, you got to be ready to make something happen when that ball touches your hand, right? Or, you're playing the game of baseball. Baseball, I always think, is one of the hardest things to do in life, because you can fail at it 7 times out of 10 and people think you're great at it. That says enough, right? And I don't know if you've ever seen a baseball coming at you at about 80 or 90. It ain't something to play with, because some of these boys can do some tricks, and some of these young ladies who are doing softball can do some tricks with that ball. If you're playing volleyball, which brings me to another one, you got to have good eye-hand coordination. You want to be a setter, you got to retrieve the ball, you got to send it back over. We're talking tennis. All of these sports that require those things, something simple as playing with of utilizing the tennis ball through multiple activities will bring you to a space of that. And then we go with speed and agility, something that is needed everywhere, right? Brings me back to my age-old one, the cones, right? You still got the cones, and you still have the age-old drill, 5-10-5. Working on lateral quickness, right? And also, if you're on a football field, the bags, man, getting those knees up and over the bags, moving through the bags, being shifty through the bags, going back and forth, pause, hold, doing those things, helping you with flexibility, mobility, agility, speed, right? And your eye-hand coordination. These are the essentials that we can't do anything about, right? We cannot let these drills just float on by just because some created wizard thinks that what we're doing of the old days is not going to help the new days, right? Because what I watch in sports, when it comes down to a championship, the thing that always seems to win it is a basic principle, something that they've done every day, something that will come back and hunt you. One thing I teach my child and my athletes is this: never practice bad habits because they show up on the day that you don't want them. But the flip side of that is the good habit shows up as well, right? So that's something that's essential about the drills. These are drills that will make you better in everything you do, not just subject to one sport. Now, when it comes to the next segment, my next thing on the list, when I'm talking about fundamentals, purpose-based drills. Woo! As a coach, you don't know how many times I've been frustrated and annoyed seeing people put other people through things that are not purpose-based drill work that translates to the game that we are playing. Especially now in the age of social media. Everybody wants to go viral, right? And you will see people in the gym doing things that do not make any sense, right? And I have seen people as well disrespect other folks' craft as when it comes to teaching a young athlete. Whereas you think that just because you woke up today and you saw something on Instagram or TikTok or on YouTube, you think you can just go out there and emulate it one time. And it's also something that's not purpose based. It's not something that's going to help them reach what it is that they may not be good at. Your job as a trainer or a coach or whatever it is, or dad, mom, whoever's working with these people, is to identify their weakness and to make sure that the weakness cannot be identifiable by the person who is going against them. And the best way to do that is to do things that are purpose based, right? Purpose based practices. And the first thing about purpose based is it has to translate to the sport. Like in basketball, when we do the drill of 3-on-2 and 2-on-1 and 4-on-5, 4-on-3 and 5-on-4, right? I like to call it escalator, where every trip you got to hustle back because you might be down a man. That's real life. That game, that happens all the time. Dude goes down, shoots the ball, may have fell or slipped. Everybody else already got the ball out the net. We going down the court. They going fast. Boom. It's already happened. You got to be ready for that. That translate, right? Or we're working on any type of transition scenario where it's timed, right? Or we have a drill where we have in-game scenarios, right? And one of those drills that we do, we turn up the noise, so loud, crowd noise. It's really loud in there. You can't hear the coach. You have to be able to focus. And it's a small segment, but it's a small sample size that could be the determining factor in being the person who finishes second and first in terms of winning a championship, because you're not prepared for additional purpose and what it is you're doing on a day-to-day basis, right? Your things that you do have to have meaning and purpose in any scenario and situation. Make sure that it translates to the sport that they're doing, right? And if we're talking football, two things that we did this past season that was very great, and I was like, we got to do this all the time. Scramble drill and pursuit. Those things you have to be able to do. We got to have all hats flying to the ball if we're playing defense, right? We have to know where to go when the quarterback breaks contain, but his eyes are still downfield and he's looking for the person who he wants to throw the ball to. That doesn't just happen magically, right? Why do you think Travis Kelce always knows where to go when Patrick scrambles? Because he knows him. That's a chemistry. That's something that they practice. They don't just do that in the moment. They've been building this up for years. It's a reason that they're so good at it and you can't stop it, right? Those things, right? When you're watching the Golden State Warriors and they run that slip screen, or where Draymond does that flash screen and he doesn't hand it off to the first person, but he gives it to the second person, or he slightly rubs that next guy so that Steph can pop open, and he just has that chemistry of just knowing where Steph is going to be, and Clay as well. That comes with time. You have to practice those things, right? You have to know that my guy's going to be where I believe he's going to be. That comes with a little bit of practice. And making sure that what it is that we're doing also transitions to the sport that I play, right? Make sure that it transitions to the sport that I play, and make sure that it transitions to the position that I play. Please don't have kids doing drills that don't translate to what it is that they want to be or do. Like things that make sense. And also, for the biggest part of purpose-based drills is make sure that it translates to anything they can do. You don't want to teach them just to be a one-trick pony. What if these people specialize in more than one thing? So that's where you got drills like when you're working dots or when you're working four corners, because it's an agility practice and it's something that just works in everything. It can go in all sports, right? Or if I want to go to the pool and do a pool workout and we're working on, doing things in the pool and swimming, building a lot of those muscles and contracting muscles that we can't touch on a day-to-day basis and putting them in a better space. Make sure that it translates to anything that it is that they can do. I just got a couple of training tips to always know whenever you are working with athletes, right? First thing is this: keep the motor hot. Do not let them become Luke. Don't let them become lukewarm when it is they're doing their training. Do not let them sit on anything. Put them in situations and scenarios to where the intensity is high, where they know that it is clock in, clock out type scenario. To where when I got here, I'm maxing it out. I ain't leaving nothing. And I'm going to take it to the top. And how do I keep the motor running? The way that I keep the motor running is that my drills, my individual things, aside of when we're doing team-based scenario, anything that's indie, that's broken down into a micro, is at a higher intensity than when we're just conditioning as a team. And I know some people might be thinking like, what? Like, how does that even make sense? Like, how can the drills be more than just running as a conditioning as a team? Where it is that, right? You know how the game is 90%, mental, 10% physical, right? Well, there's so many parts of the games that we play that there's a mental aspect that we have to put ourselves in, right? We have, I'm just breaking down the football terms, right? You have the O-line, D-line on one side of the field. You have the receivers and DBs on one side of the field. You got the linebackers over here. You got the quarterbacks. You may have a fullback in your situation, depending on the personnel that it is that you may run, whatever that might be. Every single one of those people have a certain thing that they need to work on to make sure that they can maximize what they can do for the team, so that when all 11 people step on the field, that they're not the one group that can mess up the play. So whenever they're in their drills, because all of us have to work together, this piece has to work with this piece, has to work, this piece to break this whole piece together. What has to take place is everybody has to max out when they're doing anything individual, any drill-based scenario, especially if it's sport-specific and position-specific, because you're going to do that movement more than anything else that you're going to do in the game. You're going to do, because the average football player is probably about 3.5 to 5 yards, right? You're not going to, on average, run 60-meter sprints. Now, I'm not saying that's not good because it builds mental fortitude, but what I'm saying is this: there is a chance that you're going to be running 3.5 to 5 yards. And with that 3.5, right, that ball get off is that what you need for the offensive line and that defensive line, right? For that technique, that technical sense, sitting in those stances, firing off the ball get off for a receiver. I tell all of my receivers, every play is supposed to look like a 9. Looks like I'm going deep. He should never be able to guess what it is that I'm doing, because if that's the case, that means I got too many bad habits. I pop up when it's time for me to sink and he can see it. And that's not what I want to sell. So, excuse me. When we are doing anything individual, the motor has to get hot, and then when it's drill based, it has to be even more, because it focuses more on what it is that I actually do, right? And make sure that whenever it is that I'm training an athlete, or I'm teaching, or I'm molding, or I'm building, it never gets personal. It never gets personal, because the moment it gets personal, it gets away from the goal. It gets to the point to where nobody is actually going after what it is that we're supposed to be doing. It gets so far away from the goal. Don't ever take it personal. If it is personal, the only personal feeling that you should have, I know that's contradictory, that you should have is that you want to see everybody around you succeed. That's the only personal effect. And if it's outside of the realms of that, then it's going to go to a place that is so dark, it's going to take you away from the initial purpose of what it is that you were doing. And that's not what we want out of the game. So that's going to be the things to remember when I'm talking about fundamental first, drills that are built for every single athlete, the essentials. I'm talking about flexibility, mobility, speed, agility, things that eye-hand coordination that will take you across all sports, right? Purpose-based drills where we're talking about it translating to the sport, translating to my position, right? And making sure that it is something that can translate across all sports. And tips for training, keeping the motor hot, right? When we're doing drills, they ascend higher than anything that it is that we're doing, and to never take it personal. These are the things to understand. It's a fundamental practice, and it's so basic. It's all about the basics, and that's what takes us to where we are. Now, before we get out of here today, you guys know one of my favorite segments, right, is the historical highlight. And today, for the historical highlight, this is a team that everybody knows and loves because they changed the game, right? But did you know who they used to be? Well, we're going to highlight the Philadelphia Warriors. Now, the Philadelphia Warriors are not the Philadelphia 76ers. They are the present day Golden State Warriors. And they won their first championship in 1947. Now, as it presently stands, right, they are third all time when it comes to championships in the NBA, just edging the beloved Chicago Bulls, who were so dominant within the 90s, who have 6, and the Golden State Warriors have 7. Now, the guy that may stick out more than anybody when you think about the Golden State Warriors is none other than Chef Curry, or Steph Curry, I mean, depending on what you call him. The guy who changed the game. The person who gives the little guy hope, because you see this little man going up against so many of these giants, and he's just tearing them down. And he's such a dog at everything he does. So I'd like to give him a shout out to the Philadelphia Warriors for your contributions to the game of basketball and present state Golden State Warriors, and how you've changed the game through your motion offense and the way that it is so smooth and the team oriented practice that you guys have and the togetherness. So I salute you guys. Now, to close this thing out for today, once again, thank you for sitting with us. Thank you for talking. Thank you for listening to what it is that we got. We do have a call to action all the time. And that's the call to action is just to share this pod with someone else, right? Tell someone, man, dude, what Coach Peters over there talking about is stuff that is essential, not just for me in my coaching life, but it's something that can help me in everything that I'm doing, right? Go ahead and share this with someone. You never know who it could be for. You never know what student athlete may need to hear this. You never know what dad or mom may need to hear this when they're thinking about investing in the future of their children. And if you like this content, make sure that you like and subscribe what it is that you see so that you can be up on more and more things that come through the company of All About the Basics. It's not just one thing. There's so many things that can come through it. But the Coaches Chronicles is the podcast that will take place. The stories and the strategies throughout the years that I encounter on a day-to-day basis while within this field as a coach. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. That's going to be another one. I'm Coach P, and I'm out. See ya.